Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 16 2015 NFL predictions. Well, this week I am on pace, I'm on pace to have my best record of the year. This week so far, I am 11-4, with the Monday night game still up for grabs. And again, I'm going to take, for everybody to remind you, I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints to beat the Detroit Lions. And now overall for the year, I'm 137-85. That's 61.7% of the games correct. So overall, that's a pretty, I'm getting right back to where my average is. So in the next 2 weeks, if I can get, a couple more 12-4 weeks, or even better than that, I can get to that 63% like I usually hit every year. What a crazy Week 15 in the NFL. I do want to congratulate the Cincinnati Bengals, Green Bay Packers, and Seattle Seahawks for all clinching playoff berths. Cincinnati, with A.J. McCarron, who, kudos to him, became the first quarterback from the University of Alabama to win a game since 1987 when Jeff Ruffledge did it. The last 5 Alabama quarterbacks that have been drafted were combined 0-11, and the other 2 that were in NFL games were Greg McElroy had 1 game, and Brody Coyle had 10 starts, and he lost every one of them. And, that game against San Francisco, it was a bit of a competitive game. There was a big stop early in the game, but McCarron made some good throws, and the Bengals defense got 3 big turnovers on Blaine Gabbert, and that was the big difference. So, congratulations to the Bengals for making the playoffs for the 5th consecutive year. Let's see, for Green Bay, they got a big-time victory over Oakland, 30-20. It was a really good and competitive back-and-forth game. Derek Carr was able to shut off 2 early interceptions to throw a big touchdown to Amari Cooper over the rookie Demarius Randall to make it a 20-17 game. But then after that, Rodgers drove down the field and got a big touchdown pass off to James Jones, and the Packers led at 24-20, and then they were able to win 30-20 to end the game. To me, Green Bay in the playoffs again. It's kind of like Cincinnati. They're kind of in that same situation where, again, they've made it. Good for them. I don't think anybody in the NFL is surprised or, that disappointed. They just know that this Packer team is back in it, and they have a decent chance to surprise people with how good they can play. And then, of course, you have the hot Seattle Seahawks, who are rolling, who have now won 5 straight games. They are now 9-5, and they are making the playoffs for the 4th consecutive year. Unfortunately, this year they could not win the NFC West, which they have done the last 2 years, because Arizona beat Philadelphia last night, and they clinched the NFC West for the first time since 2009. So congratulations to the Arizona Cardinals. But I do believe that the Seattle Seahawks are a very scary team. They are playing at an extremely high level, and they are playing at the hottest level. And I have to tell you, if I had to take the Seattle Seahawks or Kansas City Chiefs, or even Pittsburgh, those 3 wild card teams are going to be the scariest teams to me in the playoffs that can make a deep run into the postseason. Alright, time for my thoughts and picks on each game. This Thursday on Christmas Eve, when the 4-10 San Diego Chargers go to the 6-8 Oakland Raiders, I'm going to take the Oakland Raiders. And then on Saturday, the day after Christmas, when the 7-7 Washington Redskins go to the 6-8 Philadelphia Eagles, I'm going to take the Washington Redskins. And then on Sunday, when the 4-10 San Francisco 49ers go to the 6-8 or 5-9 Detroit Lions, I'm going to take the Detroit Lions. When the 3-11 Cleveland Browns go to the 9-5 Kansas City Chiefs, I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs. When the 7-7 Houston Texans go to the 3-11 Tennessee Titans, I'm going to take the Houston Texans. When the 5-9 Jacksonville Jaguars go to the 6-8 or 5-9 New Orleans Saints, I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints. When the 12-2 New England Patriots go to the 9-5 New York Jets, I'm going to take the New England Patriots. When the 14-0 Carolina Panthers go to the 7-7 Atlanta Falcons, I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers. When the 5-9 Chicago Bears go to the 6-8 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When the 4-10 Dallas Cowboys go to the 6-8 Buffalo Bills, I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills. When the 9-5 Pittsburgh Steelers go to the 4-10 Baltimore Ravens, I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers. When the 6-8 Indianapolis Colts go to the 5-9 Miami Dolphins, I'm going to take the Indianapolis Colts. When the 6-8 St. Louis Rams go to the 9-5 Seattle Seahawks, I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks. And then when the 10-4 Green Bay Packers go to the 12-2 Arizona Cardinals, I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals. And then in the Sunday night game, when the 6-8 New York Giants go to the 9-5 Minnesota Vikings, I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings. And then in the Monday night game, when the when the 11-3 Cincinnati Bengals go to the 10-4 Denver Broncos, I'm going to take the Denver Broncos. Alright, time for my thoughts on each game. San Diego at Oakland. I'm going to give a round of applause to the San Diego Chargers fans for possibly seeing their last game at home for the San Diego Chargers. The Chargers, Raiders, and Rams, of course, are the three teams that are possibly or interested in moving out to Los Angeles. I do believe this offseason you will see one of them move. You could see more of them move. But I do believe one team will move out to Los Angeles. And the way San Diego played against the Dolphins yesterday, it was a very nice, positive send-off for San Diego fans to remember the Chargers, if this is indeed their last game. And Danny Woodhead had a phenomenal game. He became the first Charger running back with 4 touchdowns in one game since LaDainian Tomlinson did it. I don't remember exactly when LT did it, but I do know that LT was the last running back to have 4 total touchdowns in the game. And for a guy like Phillip Rivers, you feel really bad for him. He has 4,287 yards, 66.7% completion percentage. And, again, he puts up all these great numbers, but at the same time, I'm one of those guys that a lot of people call Phillip Rivers elite. He's an elite statistical passer, but he's not an elite overall quarterback because year after year after year, this guy is about to miss the playoffs since 2010 for the 5th time in 6 years. I understand that he's battled through injuries and the general manager has not given him enough talent, but if he's an elite quarterback, he should be able to pull off some of the victories that, elite quarterbacks can pull off. And there have been games this year, even through all the injuries. Cincinnati, Chicago, my Ravens, Kansas City 2 weeks ago, where the Chargers had chances to win those games, and Rivers had the ball in his hand. And he could have gotten them the win or gotten them the tie, and he couldn't come up with it. So to me, I think Phillip Rivers, he's a great statistical quarterback, but is he an elite overall quarterback? I just don't believe so, because you have to have more overall success for me to consider being elite. Stats are great, and stats are just numbers, and I'm a big stat guy, probably just from knowing all these numbers. But to me, I judge more on overall winning. And stats are good as tiebreakers or just good placeholders. They don't really measure success, in my opinion. That's just me. Everybody has any problems with it, you can put it in the comment section. Let me know your opinion. But to get back to the game, the Oakland Raiders, again, like I said, they lost 30-20 to the Green Bay Packers. They have now clinched their 13th straight non-winning season, which is the longest streak in the NFL. Unbelievable that they're still in this unfortunate funk. But I do have to give the Raiders credit. There is a lot of upside this year with this team, then that I believe next year they will have a winning season, at least in my opinion. I will go that far. But when I look at this game, the main thing I looked at was this. St. Louis and San Diego last week had their final home games, and they had big victories over teams that nobody thought they could beat. And to me, Oakland, who's one of those teams, I believe they're going to put up a similar type of performance. They have Khalil Mack, who is leading the league with 15 sacks, and Amari Cooper's had a sensational year. He's 13th in the league in receiving yards at 1,040, and he's 22nd in the league in receptions at 68. And I think the difference of this game is it's going to be Phillip Rivers behind that offensive line, which has been marred by injuries, but he's been sacked the 7th most out of all the QBs in the league with 36 sacks. To me, when I look at this game, could San Diego win this game? They absolutely could. Phillip Rivers has gotten his team very competitive in most of their games. However, just knowing that this could be the Raiders' final home game, they have enough talent at receivers that they can beat whatever's left of the Chargers secondary, and they have Latavius Murray who can gash any defense when he gets his feet going for a good game. And I just feel again the Raiders, just like the Rams and the Chargers, are going to send their home fans, if it's the last time, with one more great home victory. Again, it should be a great competitive game, but I'm going to take the Raiders just because I believe that they have enough talent around them. The Chargers are really beat up, and they have the emotional factor of saying goodbye to the Oakland Alameda Coliseum. So that's why I'm going to take the Raiders to beat the Chargers. Redskins over Eagles. Congratulations, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, for the first time in his career yesterday, won back-to-back games. And I'm pretty sure Kirk Cousins likes that. And, and congratulations for, the Redskins. They're 7-7. Kirk Cousins had another phenomenal home game. He put up another 5 touchdowns. And this team is just playing at an incredibly impressive level. Their defense is getting stops. Their defense is causing turnovers. Cousins is playing productive football. And the reason why I'm going to take Washington is I just like their confidence right now. Cousins now no longer has the road victory syndrome of this guy can't win on the road because he just beat Chicago a couple weeks ago. And they're playing a Philadelphia team right now which is reeling after another pathetic loss to the Arizona Cardinals. This is the third time in the last 5 games the Eagles have given up 40-plus points to a team. And it's just something where, when I look at this game, the Redskins have a really good run defense. And the Philadelphia Eagles, the worst thing that they have not been able to do the entire year is run the football. DeMarco Murray, who was the number 1 leading rusher in the league last year, has now plummeted all the way to 26 with 606 yards. This defense, they lost Byron Maxwell the other day. They lost Eric Rowe. They lost some other defenders. Sam Bradford had another Sam Badford type of game where even though he threw for 300 yards and he threw for 2 touchdowns, everybody could brag about that. He also committed 3 turnovers. 2 of them were his fault. The other one you could argue wasn't his fault, but I will give him the blame because whenever you get sacked, you have to hold on to the football. That's the bottom line. So, to me, I look at this and say that if the Eagles lose this game, they will only clinch this will clinch only their second losing season in the last decade. The last time they were at a losing season was 2005. And to me, I just look at the Redskins and say they have very good weapons all around, and I don't know if the Eagles can stop. You have Deshaun Jackson. You have Garcon. You have Reed, who's been having a great breakout year, and you're seeing the potential in why the Redskins drafted him. And to me, I like Washington's confidence. There's something about this game where Washington, they've played really good football. They look happy. They feel more confident. And this Philadelphia team, even though they got 2 big wins over the Bills and the Patriots, you could argue that those were really not off of their skill, but also just fluky stuff and hokey stuff. And also the Bills were just undisciplined. So, but to me though, I'm going to take the Redskins here. I'm going to trust Kirk Cousins that he can win this big game. I know that's a mouthful to say, but I just want to bring this up. Last year, the Redskins and Eagles played each other in a winner-go-home situation for Philadelphia, and they lost. And they beat them. So Washington knows this situation, and they've proven in the past, just last year, that they've been able to win in this situation when it counts. To either spoil the Eagles' season or secure theirs. Because if the Redskins win the NFC East. So again, it should be a very competitive game. I won't be surprised when I'm going to take the Redskins here. I trust the Redskins' defense, and I think Kirk Cousins can put another solid game together and give this team its first division title since 2012. Kudos to you, Kirk. And I know you will like that. So that's why I'm going to take the Redskins to beat the Eagles. Lions over Niners. Ugh. This is, now as the year's gone on and more teams are getting out of the playoffs, you start getting in the sense of a lot of these games are becoming more meaningless and not effective. It's like, oh, these 2 teams are playing. Great. Basically these games are winners unimprove their draft stock and losers improve their draft stock. And that's why I look at this game. Detroit, they're playing a good big Monday night game tonight against New Orleans, who's also out of the playoffs, so they're playing 2 meaningless teams with really no meaningful implications. But I'm going to take Detroit here because even though San Francisco has won the last 9 games against the Lions, San Francisco has the worst offense in the game in terms of yards and points at 291.4 and 14.4 respectively. And there's just a part of me going, can the Niners defense pressure Matthew Stafford? Can they cause him to make mistakes? Absolutely. But if you had to give me Stafford and his weapons against the Niners defense, or Gabbert and his weapons against the Lions defense, I'm going to take Stafford and his weapons against the Niners defense just a slight bit over Gabbert against the Lions defense. Again, this is a meaningless game, and there's really not that much. But I'm going to take the Lions here just because they're at home, and they just have more offensive firepower and a better quarterback that can win this type of game in Detroit. So again, that's why I'm going to take the Lions to beat the Niners. Kansas City over Cleveland. Kudos to the Kansas City Chiefs. They are the first team in NFL history to win 8 straight games after losing 5 straight in a year. They've played incredible football. Their defense is 8th in yards allowed and 3rd in points per game. And they've had 5 defensive touchdowns, which I believe is the most in the league. And they score the most points in between the 2-minute warnings, which is number 1 in the league. So this Chief team right now is playing at an extremely high level, and it's incredibly impressive. And I have to give Andy Reid a lot of credit, because after losing Jamal Charles, you would think this season's over. But Andy Reid said to his team, hey, we're going to play good defense. We got Spencer Ware, we got Drake West, we have Macklin, we have Alex. We can win with this roster, and that's exactly what they've done. And they're playing a Cleveland team that's coming in there after getting blown out after getting a decisive loss against Seattle. Manziel, he completed about a little bit under 50% of his passes. He's due for about 130 yards. He threw a touchdown. He threw a pick 6. So I do believe Johnny can have a better game, because I don't believe the Seahawks defense is worse than the Chiefs defense. I believe the Chiefs defense isn't as good as Seattle's defense, but I do believe that the Chiefs defense can give Johnny a lot of problems. And Cleveland, they've secured their 8th straight losing season, and KC's won 2 last year against the Browns anyway. I think the last time they played them was in 2013, and they beat they beat Campbell. They beat Jason Campbell. So there's really not that much to say there. Do I think Cleveland can put up a fight? Not really. This KC team has a good enough defense. They're strong. Alex Smith has a good enough sense. And also they're at home. And I trust this Chief team right now. And they're going to make the playoffs along with Pittsburgh. And those are 2 teams that I know the rest of the AFC does not want to face, because they present their own unique challenges. KC defensively, Pittsburgh offensively, that I don't think any team wants to battle. So again, this game, KC should win pretty easily. They're one of my 3 locks for the week. I'm going to take Kansas City over Cleveland. I'm going to tell you to take the Vikings over the Giants, and I'm going to tell you to take the Steelers over the Ravens as my 3 locks of the week. So that's what I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs to beat the Cleveland Browns. Houston over Tennessee. Man, the Houston Texans went to their 4th quarterback of the year. TJ Yates, I hope he gets better. He tore his ACL. You never want to see a player go down like that. But to me, I hope he gets re-signed, because TJ Yates was 2-0 as a starter. And, he did contribute in 3 of the 7 Texan victories. So I do have to give him credit for that. But this was a game to me that Houston's trying to actually sweep the Titans in back-to-back seasons for the first time in franchise history. I know it's not much because they're only about 12 years old. But I looked at this game and said this. Zach Mettenberger has never won a start in his career. He is 0-8. And Mariota, with the Titans basically being out of it and with him having a knee injury, they might just tell Mariota to just sit the rest of the year and let Mettenberger just play the final 2 games. Zach Mettenberger also has a fun stat of he's thrown at least 1 interception in every game he started. And the last time he played the Texans, which was earlier in the year, he went 22-31, 171 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. So, to me, whoever starts a quarterback for Houston, Brian Hoyer or Brandon Weeden, I think that even if Brian Hoyer or Weeden struggle, or maybe more so Brandon Weeden, if Brandon Weeden struggles and he puts up like 14 to 17 points, I think the Texans defense, with how banged up the Titans offense is, not having Mariota, not having Kendall Wright, not having Dorial Green-Beckham, who went down with an injury, that Texan defense can hold that Titan team to below 17 points. So this game is going to be predominantly won by their defense, because I don't think that their offense, the Titans' offense, can produce enough that the Texans have to worry about it. if the Texans put up 14, Houston will only give up 7. If the Texans put up 20, or if the Titans put up 20, Houston will, put up 23. So, again, I'm expecting a low-scoring game that Tennessee's not going to really be able to score that much on offense because of their injuries. And I just have confidence in the Texans. Bill O'Brien, as much as brash and as maybe arrogant he's been in the league this year, I have to give him credit that for the second consecutive year, he's going on to his third or fourth quarterback and saying, he's still winning games. Because last year he had Fitzpatrick, Mallett, Savage, and Keenum. This year he's gone through Mallett, Hoyer, Yates, and Wheaton. And the fact that this guy can possibly get 2 9-win seasons with 4 QBs is impressive to me, no matter which way you slice it. So again, I'm going to take Houston here. I think they can put up enough offense if Brandon Wheaton scores. If Brian Hoyer starts, he had a phenomenal game against them earlier in the year. I think he can do the same thing again. And the Houston defense can hold the Titans to low enough points that the Texans offense will have to worry about scoring that much. So that's why I'm going to take the Houston Texans to beat the Tennessee Titans. New Orleans over Jacksonville. Jacksonville has to be, in my opinion, the first team in NFL history to have this stat. They've lost to they've lost to 2 teams on 6-game or 5 or more game losing streaks. Both the Chargers and Falcons were on 6-game losing streaks at home in the same year. That has to be a first. I don't think any other team in NFL history has been able to make that claim to fame, that 2 teams on losing streaks of 5 or more games were able to beat the same team at home in the same year. And to me, that was a huge shot of negativity into the Gus Bradley mantra, and I do believe that if with their final 2, if they go 5-11, he deserves to get fired. To me, Gus Bradley, I don't really care what the situation is, and I've been talking to some people today, and they're saying that Bradley's been a great coach, and he's had to deal with what he's worked with. He's been there for 3 years. If you can't get an average season, okay, I'll put it even that way. If you can't get 8 wins in 1 year after 3 drafts, after 3 periods of free agency, after 3 years, how is that acceptable? Because to me, 3 years should be long enough. If you're good enough at your job at coaching, if your manager's good enough at picking talent, you should be able to get at least a 500 season. Look at the Rams. Rams fans are furious because of how Jeff Fisher, if they lose to Seattle, they'll be 7-9, which is their 4th straight losing season. And why? Fisher hasn't been fired. But I guess people in Jacksonville are going, well, this guy has a good, source of leadership, and we don't want to give that up. So, again, I just don't really, I don't really quite understand that. But I'm going to take New Orleans here. I think this game is very similar to Detroit. Jacksonville's playing the worst points per game defense in the NFL. The Saints give up 30 points a game. And just like I said last week with Detroit and New Orleans, Bortles will get his, and his receivers will be able to run up and down the field on the turf in the Superdome. I just expect Drew Brees and his offense, the way they have their confidence building, especially when they're coming off a game where they allowed their lowest amount of points overall in a whole game this year at 17. I just think Drew Brees, if they had to, Drew Brees will outshoot Blake Bortles in a shootout-type game. There's nothing against Blake Bortles, who I'm really fond of and I'm really impressed by. I'm just a guy that, I just see it that way. The Saints defense, they might have a little bit of momentum. They might be able to get a couple sacks. Bortles isn't sacked a good amount this year. And I just believe that the Saints are going to win this game. Also, the Jaguars have never beaten New Orleans in New Orleans. So that's what I'm going to go with as well. So that's going to take the Saints to beat the Jaguars. Patriots over the Jets. New England has secured their 6th straight 12-plus win season. They are joined. That is the 2nd longest active streak in the NFL and the 2nd longest in NFL history since 1970. The only team that had more 12-plus winning seasons were the Indianapolis Colts from 03 to 09, which was 7 years. And I have to give Tom Brady and this team a lot of credit. If Cam Newton wasn't undefeated, Tom Brady would be my MVP hands down, because he's had to deal with injuries out the wazoo. Blunt, Edelman, Gronk, Amendola, the offensive line, Cannon, Solder, the defense. You haven't had Dante Hightower. Patrick Chung went out of an injury. Jamie Collins was out a few games. Not Brandon Bolt, but the Patriots just had a mile-high list of injuries, and the fact that they are 12-2 and back in one of the top 2 seeds in the AFC is just incredibly remarkable. That they can just, as long as they have Tom Brady and Gronk, basically for the most part, this team can still win a lot of football games. But I'm gonna take the Patriots here, just because I look at this game and say Brady's 11-3 all time in New York at MetLife at the Jets. The last loss he had was in 2013 when Geno Smith beat him after that hokey push call was made that gave the Jets 15 extra yards, and basically it was a chip shot. But there was just a part of me going to the Patriots that it's just hard not to pick against them. I know the Jets, and kudos to the Jets, they've won 4 straight games since 2010. Kudos to you. You're trying to win 5 straight, which is from the last time you did that was 2010 as well. But to me, I look at the Patriots and just say they have Brady and they have a good enough team overall. Hopefully Amendola's okay, and they just signed Steven Jackson, which will be a really nice help to that running back field of guys they have. And I just think the Patriots will be able to pull this one out. Though I think the Jets the Jets will make Brady work for his yards and work for his plays. But I just don't think that, again, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he had a 23 of 30 game, about 290 yards, about 2 TDs and no interceptions last time they played him in New England. And they still couldn't win. That, to me, is about as good a game as you'll get out of Ryan Fitzpatrick that out of Ryan Fitzpatrick in his entire career, in his entire life. That's about as good as you can get from him. And they still couldn't get it done. This Patriot team has had a lot more injuries, I will admit that. So definitely the Jets have an advantage. But I'm going to take the Patriots here just because the Patriots are playing for something. They're trying to knock the Jets out of the playoffs. I'm pretty sure they do not want to face them in the playoffs. And to me, as long as you have Brady against that Jets team, it's the number 5, it's the number 1 offense, number 1 passing offense versus the number 5 overall defense. I'll take that number 1 passing offense when it's led by Tom Brady. So again, it should be a competitive game, and I'm excited for it. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets won. But I'm going to take New England just because New England just will find another way to win another game. So that's what I'm going to take the Patriots to beat the Jets. The Panthers over the Falcons. Wow, was that a game in New York yesterday? What a game. Cam Newton is playing at an absolutely incredible level. Cam Newton, over his last 7 games, has completed 64.9% completion percentage of his passes, 1,382 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 2 overall turnovers. 1 interception and 1 fumble the other day. And 1 fumble yesterday. And I know the big talk yesterday was about OBJ and Josh Norman and all the physical scuffles that they got into. Here's what I'll say about that. I'll mention that real quick. I think Odell Beckham Jr. deserves to get fined. Pretty big. I believe both of them deserve to get fined, but I do not believe Odell Beckham Jr. deserves to be suspended. Because there was a play yesterday in the Steelers-Broncos game where there was a guard. His name was Cody Wallace. Cody Wallace of the Pittsburgh Steelers launched himself into David Bruton. And he pretty much leveled him and took him out of the game. But I don't think Cody Wallace is going to get, he's going to get suspended a whole game. And to me, I'm not saying what Odell did and what Josh did it was way over the line, and it went from physical football to just physical fighting. And I do realize that people can say, what about Andre Johnson and Cortland Finnegan 5 years ago? That's fair enough, but that was 5 years ago. A lot's changed over 5 years, and we've learned a lot more, and there's definitely been a whole new standard set. But I do believe that Odell should have been ejected, and I think that would have been enough. If Odell could not have played the rest of that second half, he would have probably learned his lesson, and Tom Coughlin probably would have ripped into him, and just at that moment of feeling, I think that might have calmed Dodo down, or maybe forced him to realize, hey, you need to control your temper and just relax. Even though I do have to admit, for most of the game, Josh Norman basically owned Odell Beckham Jr. I will admit, for most of the game. But to get back to the game, Carolina, Cam Newton is playing like the MVP. Those are phenomenal numbers. And they're playing an Atlanta team that just barely got lucky against a Jacksonville team that, like I said before, had done that before against the Chargers. Carolina has beaten Atlanta the last 2 times in Atlanta. They have never beaten Atlanta in Atlanta 3 straight times in franchise history. I think this game can be competitive because, again, Jonathan Stewart's dealing with a foot injury, and you have this Panther team that is coming off a shaky game. And also, this is a division opponent that they just played 2 weeks ago, and I don't expect the Falcons to get shut out again. But just like in New Orleans, Drew Brees just like New Orleans did in the Superdome, where they put up 5. They made it a competitive game, and Cam had to win again in the clutch and win 41-38. So the Falcons can give the Panthers a good run for their money, but again, with Carolina, they've found every way to win. And I think again in Atlanta, where Atlanta has a little bit of confidence and they might have a little bit of momentum. I think the Panthers, with everything that they have on the line, and knowing how confident they've been, and having also the 3rd longest winning streak in NFL history, tied with the 03-04 Patriots, I think with 18 straight regular season wins, or 18 straight overall wins. It's incredibly impressive to see this Carolina team play the way they are. And that's why I'm going to take them, because of just all those reasons I mentioned earlier. So that's why I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers to beat the Atlanta Falcons. Tampa over Chicago. Poor Tampa. You know, they're in such an awkward state right now. Let's understand what just happened. After winning 3 or 4 games, they've now lost 3 of their last 4 games. And in the last 2 games they played, the exact opposite of what you would think they should do happened. Against New Orleans, like I mentioned earlier, the worst overall defensive points per game. The Bucs scored the fewest amount of points held by the Saints defense all year. And then with the Rams who in their last 6 games had scored a combined 6 offensive touchdowns, put up 4 offensive touchdowns against the Bucs defense. So to me, that's a really bad sign for Lovie Smith and how awkward this is for him. You know, and it just is a really bad time. You know, I would consider if Lovie, you know, who's automatically out of playoff contention, if Carolina decides to rest their starters, fair enough, he can get 8 wins. But I do believe that Lovie needs 8 wins in order to possibly not have people talk about his job. Because to see what the Bucs are going through right now, it's a very small collapse. To see where they were after beating Philadelphia and then beating Atlanta, you know, now they've gone out of playoff contention and the best they can do is 500. And to me, Lovie needs to be 500 in order, you know, for people not to consider not having a job, because this team was so talented. They had so many big accomplishments throughout the year that you would think that they could be better or, you know, in the playoff hunt. Not a losing record. But they're playing Chicago. Jay Cutler's committed 2 turnovers in back-to-back games. It has not really been that impressive for them. They're off to another losing season, and with the way the schedule marks out, the Bears could be in for their 2nd straight 5-11 season. This one's a little more different. This is John Fox's first year instead of Trestman's 2nd, and also John Fox has put a lot of fight and heart into this team. That's a positive momentum. Even though with Jay Cutler, they might have another losing season because that's just Jay Cutler. He's just proven not to be a winner in the National Football League, and the Bears still have to suffer for a few more years. The Bears have won 4 of the last 5 against the Bucs. But when I look at these 2 teams, Tampa it's almost like a similar game that you could say both defenses have some bright spots, but they definitely have their weaknesses. And both offenses, they have premier running backs. They have two big time wide receivers, and everybody else is average or a role player. Even though if Vincent Jackson plays, that'll be a huge help for Tampa. I don't know if he will. Let's just say he's not, so that's why I'm not putting him in this conversation. But I'm going to take the Bucs here because I'm just like with Bortles and Breeze. When you got two of the similar teams, I always go with the better quarterback, and I will take Jameis Winston right now over Jacob in this game. It should be a competitive game, but just like San Francisco, Detroit, and Jacksonville, New Orleans to a lesser degree, these are games. More and more games are becoming more and more meaningless because there's really not that much at stake for either team. So that's why I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to beat the Chicago Bears. Pittsburgh over Baltimore. Wow, are we bad? We've lost. The Ravens are on the verge of tying their worst franchise record in franchise record in franchise history at 4-12, and we've now lost 5 home games in 1 year, which is something we have never done in franchise history. So this is the low. This is the all-time low for this franchise. It seems like. And at this point, as a Raven fan, I just watch the game and just say I watched them. Honestly, I think that we should just yank every starter we have and just put the backups in, kind of treat it like preseason. We really have nothing to play for. If we win, we win. We lose. No big deal. But it's one of those interesting things where this is, for Steeler fans, this is the one game that they've been waiting for since Week 4. Because that game in Pittsburgh back in Week 4 was one of the luckiest games that we were able to escape with a victory. And I know as a Raven fan that basically at this point, if we can sweep the Steelers, that'll make the entire year a lot better. Do I think we can be competitive? Absolutely. Jimmy Clausen did a good enough job, and if we get Matt Schaub, he's better than Clausen, so we can put up a fight. But we are playing the most, or one of the most, or I think the second most explosive offense in the league behind the Arizona Cardinals in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh's now scored 30-plus points in 6 consecutive games, which is a franchise record. And Antonio Brown, who by far is the best wide receiver in the National Football League, in my opinion right now, he just put on another phenomenal show. 16 receptions, 189 yards, and 2 touchdowns against the number 1 rated defense in the National Football League. I commend you, sir. That's incredibly impressive, and you are the best receiver in the league, and you are deserving of getting paid by the Steelers organization. But again, I look at this game, we have no chance. They had Michael Vick in Pittsburgh. They now have Big Ben back. They're playing for their playoff lives, so they'll make sure to, send a good message. And also it's us. And anytime the Pittsburgh Steelers can beat the Baltimore Ravens to a pulp, they will get a good smile on their face. So kudos, to Baltimore. Enjoy the last home game. We have to see the misery of Pittsburgh beating us in our place, but we just have too little talent to deal with the Pittsburgh team right now. That's firing on all cylinders. So that's why I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers to beat the Baltimore Ravens. The Bills over the Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are starting Kellen Moore this Sunday. Their 4th quarterback this year. Tony Romo, Brandon Whedon, Matt Castle, and now Kellen Moore. After Matt Castle threw a horrendous interception that was also called for intentional grounding, Jason Garrett yanked him out and put Kellen Moore in. Kellen Moore, I'm not going to put that much blame into him. First game, didn't even start, didn't even know what he was doing. Just throwing around. He made some big plays, he made some big throws. He seemed like he had a better connection with Des Bryant than Matt Castle or Brandon Whedon never had. And to me, I just look at it and say, the Cowboys are just giving Moore the chance to just audition for everybody else because I do not expect him back in a Dallas Cowboy uniform next year. And also, the Cowboys, this is an amazing stat. The Dallas Cowboys, over the last 22 quarters, that is 5.5 games, have been outscored at home 137-63. So, to me, that was astounding to realize the Cowboys, in their last 4.5 games, or 5.5 games, they've been outscored at home 137-63. So, and also it's also another disappointing year for Buffalo. Rex Ryan, as brash and as confident as he was, he actually regressed this team to a point where they could be on the verge, or they should be on the verge of another losing season, and they have clinched their 16th straight season without making the playoffs. The longest active streak will continue. Even though Rex said in the beginning of the year he was going to build a bully and that they were going to make the playoffs. So, well, Rex, unfortunately, you were wrong. And you probably have one more year left in Buffalo before they want your head off. If not only everybody wants it now. But I'm going to take Buffalo in this game just because Buffalo, they're going to have, even though Shady went down with an injury, and that's an unfortunate way for him to end his year. But I just look at Buffalo and say they have too much talent around them that the Cowboys just simply do not have. And if you had to give me Kellen Moore in his second game against this Bills team, Rex is just going to bring the house. He really has nothing to lose. I feel sorry for Kellen. He's going to get obliterated behind, that Bills Packers in their anger. And I just don't expect Kellen Moore to have a great game. And I think Tyrod Taylor, with how bad this Cowboys secondary, how bad this Cowboys team's been, I believe the Bills should get a nice consultation victory by beating the Dallas Cowboys and dropping them to 4-11. So that's why I'm going to take the Bills to beat the Cowboys. Indianapolis over Miami. This was really tough because Matt Hasselbeck has played like garbage the last 3 weeks. And I was a big Matt Hasselbeck guy. I said that earlier in the year he was better than Andrew Luck and he should have remained the starter over Andrew Luck. I will have to admit right now to everybody that's watching, I was completely wrong about that. Because over the last 3 games, I've seen a regression in Matt Hasselbeck that it's really made me say that maybe he got lucky, or the Colts defense was better, or just that team was in a better spot overall together that Matt Hasselbeck could make those plays. Right now, they're in one of the worst positions in the NFL, and the fact that they lost a combination of T.J. Yates and Brandon Whedon is a really tough pill to swallow for Colts fans. But at the same time, with this Colts team, they're playing a Dolphin team that they have nothing to play for. The Dolphins, they lose the final game to San Diego. In San Diego, Ryan Tannehill throws for a grand total of 217 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. And Ndamukong Suh, their $114 million paid man, gets a grand total of 3 tackles. So, ladies and gentlemen, yes, that's $210 million spent by the Miami Dolphins organization on 210 yards and 3 tackles. Real good investments, Miami. Hopefully you enjoy them. But again, I guess they were just probably going, but Miami being so lackluster, and Indy, this is the crappy toss-up game of the week in my opinion. Like, Miami could easily win this game because Tannehill, can outperform Hasselbeck, and they do have they do have Lamar Miller, who's been extremely underutilized by this team. But I just think again, I'm going to give it to Indy. There's just something in me going, Indy will be able to beat Tannehill and drop the Dolphins to 5-10, and give the Dolphins just another reason to just be frustrated in where this team's going. And also, Indy has lost back-to-back division games for the first time after winning their last 16 in a row. So that's pretty significant, in my opinion, after that. And also, Indy's also won 4 of the last 5 against the Dolphins. So Indy, I do believe, does have a slight edge off of history, and just based on overall talent, I just feel like Indy just has one more play in them than Miami does. So that's going to take the Indianapolis Colts to beat the Miami Dolphins. Seattle over St. Louis. Kudos to Jeff Fisher for winning his final home game as the St. Louis Rams. Very impressive. Case Keenum put together probably the second best game a Ram quarterback has had the entire year, behind Nick Foles' 3-touchdown game earlier in the year in Week 3 against Arizona. However, Jeff, enjoy your little 2-game winning streak. I'm happy for you that you can gain a little bit of solace and some confidence. You're going to clinch your 4th straight losing season by having to go to Seattle. The last time St. Louis won a game in Seattle was on January 8th, 2005. They've lost their last 10 tries in Seattle. Also, the last 5 games for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is the first QB in NFL history with 5 straight games of 3 or more TDs. And in the last 5 games for Russell Wilson's completed 74.3% of his passes, 1,160 yards, 19 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. He is playing the best football out of anybody over the last month, in my opinion. Because those numbers are just incredibly hard to beat. And just with how Seattle's been playing, they should get Cam Chancellor back. They're motivated. They're back in the playoffs no matter what happens. And I just respect Seattle as this team that they can beat these Rams and just show, again, that the Rams are still the Rams. And they're, they can put up a fight and they gain a little bit of confidence. And that's good for them going into the game. But I'm going to take Seattle here. Just too much offensive firepower. Hopefully they have the running game a little bit more effective. If they don't, they have Russell Wilson throwing bombs, great passes. Also, Doug Baldwin is also only the second receiver, I think, in NFL history to have 10 touchdowns in a 4-game span. The only other wide receiver to do that was Jerry Rice. So, kudos to the Seahawks. Again, too much firepower on the Seattle offense and defense that in Seattle, the St. Louis team doesn't nearly have the same fire or motivation that he did in Week 1 to beat this team. And I just don't think right now Seattle can be stopped by a team like the Rams. So that's what I'm going to take Seattle over St. Louis. Arizona over Green Bay. This is my game of the week. Arizona, congratulations to them. They have their first 12-win season in franchise history. And I believe they've won 8 straight games overall for the first time in their franchise history. Kudos to them. They have the number 1 overall offense and the 7th ranked defense. Carson Palmer is having an MVP type year, and he has definitely won the Comeback Player of the Year award to me. It's been an incredible showing by this team, and they are a legitimate Super Bowl threat, and they can beat the Panthers or the Seahawks or the Packers, like I believe they will this week. When I look at Arizona, they have the number 1 overall offense, 7th ranked defense. They know they can run it effectively. They have a good enough offensive line that protects Carson Palmer, and they have good enough range of weapons from Fitzgerald to Brown to Floyd to Nelson, where all 4 or 5 of their weapons can play their role perfectly and make this offense run perfectly in harmony. When I look at Arizona, they also have a very good running back in David Johnson, who's filling in admirably for Chris Johnson, who's on the short-term IR because of a fractured tibia. David Johnson ran for the 5th most yards in a single game by an Arizona Cardinal with 187 yards. What a phenomenal team this Arizona Cardinal team has. But when I just look at the Packers, it's just something where the Packers are good, but they're not Cardinal good. The Packers can give the Cardinals a fight, and they have Aaron Rodgers, and he can, sling it of anybody. This is a game where they really wish they had Jordy Nelson, because if Peterson goes on Cobb, Peterson's going to shut down Cobb. And I don't really see a game that's going to be great for this Packer team. The last time they played a top 5 defense on the road was Denver, and they put up a grand total of 10 points, and Rodgers only threw for 72 yards. And honestly, with how slow and how shut down this defense is, I can see Aaron Rodgers throwing another similar type of game. This is a great rematch for the playoffs, and this could happen again just in a couple weeks. The last time these two teams played in Arizona, Arizona won 51-45. It was that great playoff game. That was a shootout between Warner and Rodgers, and it was due to a big defensive touchdown, even though there was a face mask penalty that should have been called, but was not, and the Cardinals won that game. To me, I don't think it's going to be that high scoring, or as high scoring. I'm going to say Arizona gets probably about 34, and Green Bay gets about 25-27. So, but I just feel that Arizona, their defense is too talented. I hope Tyrann Mathieu is okay. He had a pretty big injury, and I hope it's nothing that serious. But I just trust Arizona's full team more than this Packers team that, even though they've got some confidence back and they've won 3 straight, in all honesty, they beat the Lions, they beat the Cowboys, and they beat the Raiders. The Raiders probably look the most impressive, but they really haven't played anybody really good until Arizona over these last few weeks. And that's going to be a true test for them that I do not think they will pass. So that's going to take the Arizona Cardinals to beat the Green Bay Packers. Vikings over Giants. The Vikings will win this game because the Giants have the worst overall defense in the league, giving up 432 yards per game. They have the worst passing defense in the league as well. And when I look at this Vikings team, Teddy Bridgewater had a career-high 5 touchdowns, 4 through the air, 1 through the ground. He played a sensational game, probably the best game of the year for him. And I think with all the talent the Vikings have receivers against this porous Giants secondary, Bridgewater could have another big game. Also, I think the big monkey wrench that goes in the Vikings' favor is Odell Beckham Jr. is possibly facing a 1-game suspension for his actions, especially the launching helmet play to Josh Norman in the game yesterday. Like I told you earlier, I believe he should be fined, not suspended, because there were other plays like that that didn't get that call. But since it's Odell and Josh, since Odell Beckham, one of the bigger names, I think they're saying this is one of the bigger marketable talents we have, and we need to be more strict. And again, Minnesota, I'm going to take them. They are 8th overall in defense and in points per game, or the 8th overall defense in points per game. And I just feel like the Giants, even if Eli Manning can put up a good game through the air, which he's shown he can do, I don't think the Giants, especially with Odell Beckham, if he doesn't play, can put up enough offense that Vikings defense can't stop. And to me also, again, Minnesota, pretty much besides Seattle and Green Bay, have pretty much, they dominated everybody else at home. And I just have that confidence against the Giants team that's reeling. And I do believe Tom Coughlin will not be there next year, because you cannot have 4 straight losing seasons, or 3 straight losing seasons and 4 straight seasons of not making the playoffs and be able to keep your job. Coughlin's 3-year Super Bowl window is up, and after this year with another losing record, it would be perfectly reasonable to fire him. So that's I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings to beat the New York Giants. And finally, Denver over Cincinnati. Cincy is 1-11 all time in road primetime games under Marvin Lewis ever. And I know A.J. McCarron, he had a solid game. But that was against the Niners defense, which has been basically reeling from the ineptitude of Blaine Gabbert in the offense. This is the Denver defense we're talking about. And the way that McCarron played against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he threw 2 interceptions, one that got returned for a pick 6, I just don't see him having a good enough game where I think Brock Osweiler, who did put up 27 points in the first half, which was incredibly impressive, I don't think that defense, I don't think McCarron can beat that defense enough the way Osweiler can with the weapons he has. Even though it is pretty shocking that Brock Osweiler has not scored a point in the last 3 second halves. In the last 3 second halves of his last 3 games, the Denver Broncos offense has scored a grand total of 0 points. So, to me, that's a big concern. And Cincinnati definitely has a defense that can make those situations come up again in the second half. And I believe it will be trouble. But I do believe that at the end of the day, with both these teams about similar, with running games, offensive lines, receivers, secondaries, Denver might have edges here, Cincinnati might have edges here. It goes down to the quarterbacks, and once again, I'm going to take the more experienced Brock Osweiler to win this game, because the Broncos know they have to win this game over an A.J. McCarron who's only going into his second start. And if he can beat the Broncos on the second start, that's an incredible accomplishment by A.J. McCarron, and the Bengals should be very happy that they have him. And I know some team will give him another shot if the Bengals decide to let him go. So those are my thoughts and comments for this week on all the games. Like, comment, rate, subscribe, and I'm also going to put a link to the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page. Please check out guys like Billy B, Geo Knows, Half Moon's Picks, Andrew Warren, Edwin Lerner, The Wise Guys, Mason Cole, Sean Ryan, King Poetic, TJ Harmon, Philadelphia, and all these other great prognosticators on the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page. Please check them out. Logan Schiff. They're all great prognosticators like myself. And that's it. Oh, one more thing. I do want to wish everybody out there that watched my videos and everybody out there around the world a very happy holidays to everybody that celebrates. Because at this time of the year, it's the nicest. It's a great time to just be with your family, celebrate all the great traditions of all the holidays and the spirit of giving and all the great kind things that make this time of year so much a pleasant time. So again, everybody out there, happy holidays. And until next week, like, comment, rate, subscribe. And this is Matt the NFL Fanatic signing off. Until next time. So long.